Hey everybody, welcome to Who Cares About the Rock Hall, a podcast about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm your host, Joe Quazala, and I'm coming to you solo today. It's towards the end of the year, 2024, and what a year it has been. We don't have anything new per se, but I didn't want to just go dark at the end of the year. In January, we will be starting back up as we get close to the new ballot. That'll be in our hands in February. But before then, I figured I would highlight some episodes that we've been doing on our Patreon. As you may know, we have a subscriber service, patreon.com/rockhallpod. You can go. If for a small fee, you get access to new episodes, and among other things, a chat room, a music league, all sorts of fun stuff. And one of the things we've been doing over there that might interest you is if you subscribe at the $10 tier, and you don't have to do it forever, but just once, then if you're interested, you can submit to be a guest on the show. And we'll have a chat for 40 minutes about whatever you want. And so for the next week or so, I wanted to highlight some of those episodes, let you guys know what you could be doing. You could be in that guest seat. It's just that easy. Patreon.com/rockhallpod, $10 tier. And the first one I wanted to share with you guys is an interesting one I talked to. Kristen isn't a part of these. So there's another selling point for you. If you're like, I want to do it, but I just don't want to talk to Kristen. It's just me, baby. But what we did the night before the induction ceremony, I actually talked to two folks who were at the ceremony, about to go to the ceremony. They were in Cleveland, and they were part of the Induct INXS movement. Did you know that's a movement? Well, you do now, because they was one of the things they wanted to talk about, and in doing so, spread the message, get the word out about their goal to see INXS get inducted. John Jamen and Jim Skivalitis are the two gentlemen who I talked to, one from New Hampshire, one from Melbourne, Australia. So spanning the globe here. But we talk not just about INXS and their chances at induction, but also what their kind of movement is all about. And, we also talk about fan petitions in general and just all sorts of stuff. So go ahead and enjoy this episode. It could be you. You're one click away. All right. Until next week, happy holidays. If you're in the Pittsburgh area, I should say, December 26th at Sunken Bus, which is in the North Hills on Babcock Boulevard. I'm doing a stand-up show, showing videos, and doing some comedy. So please come out to that. Otherwise, yes, happy holidays and enjoy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Who Cares About the Rock Hall, a podcast about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm your host, Joe Quazala. I am in the throes of listener takeover year. It was a summer, but it just keeps going. And, as long as there are listeners out there who want to talk to me, I want to talk to them. And so we are actually, right as of this moment, we are induction ceremony eve. This will come out a little bit later, but this is number 18 of what we're rocking here. And we've got two folks joining us who I believe are in Cleveland for the ceremony. So that's
we are. Yes,
very,
we are.
very exciting. Let's bring them into the conversation. And I guess I'll introduce John. John, I should have asked you how to pronounce your last name. Is it Jamen?
Jamen, very good. Nobody ever gets it right. That's good.
John, I'm sensitive to last names, so I do my best. John Jamen, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me in.
And John, who do you have with us here?
This is Jim, and I'm gonna mess up your last name.
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I'm Jim Skivalitis.
Okay, great.
Short Greek name.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there for sure. John and Jim, it's exciting to have you both here. My first time with this series, talking to two folks. And so I have some questions that I ask everybody, but I guess I'll direct them to you both, and you'll answer individually.
Right.
So first off, I know where you're calling from. You're calling from what looks like a hotel room in
A
Cleveland,
hotel
Ohio.
room overlooking the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Incredible. I'm so excited for you guys and to live vicariously through you because at least as John knows, I am not there because of my regular co-host is getting married tomorrow. So I have to attend that.
Yeah, that's a very important thing. Good man. Good man.
Yeah, priorities, I guess. But John, I am assuming you traveled to Cleveland.
I did. Yeah. I live in New Hampshire.
Okay. Got it. And Jim?
Yeah, I'm from Melbourne, Australia. So halfway across the world.
Yeah, look at that. Now, I want to stay on this route. There's some other questions I usually get to, but there's a lot going on here. What is, what's bringing you to the ceremony this year? Is there any one artist? What's the draw?
Look, I obviously want to pay respect to the various artists that are coming in. Like I've grown up with rock music. I'm a fan of Ozzy Osbourne, but I think the biggest reason to be here is we're obviously running our own petition and, really empowering the community about the potential of having INXS one day nominated, inducted. And I want to be here to see what it's all about. I really feel the vibration and the energy. And John's been many times, and we just had a quick look earlier, and we're obviously going to explore over the weekend. But I can see where INXS plays can be part of this experience as well for the community.
Excellent. So you're speaking from a perspective of someone who is devoted to getting INXS in the Rock Hall, and if
Correct.
This is the motivation, if this is the cause, why not go to Mecca? Why not go to the source? See what it's all about.
Yeah, Jim runs Induct INXS, and he's responsible for the 18,000 person petition.
We've got a team. Yeah, we've got a team of us that do
Excellent.
that. I'm part of the team, and you've got to go and see what it's all about to get a better feel for what's there.
I think that's smart. Sometimes people talk about the hall, or if I even mean to be a little pejorative, some people run their mouth about the hall and they don't know what's going on. So I think this is a good idea to go see what the ceremony is like in person, also see what the museum is, and like maybe you're alluding to there, to get a sense for the community or lack thereof around this kind of thing.
There's so many things like this year. John would probably, because he's been to quite a few events, but you don't normally get the Rock Hall ceremony in the same location with the Rock Hall Museum. So what an honor to be, this is where they're going to end up anyway, in this museum. The ceremony, what's that experience like? We haven't gone there yet. That's tomorrow. But yeah, the fact that it's in the one city was, that was one of the reasons I came. And, you have a look at it. There's a buzz there. There's an actual buzz at the Rock Hall right now.
Totally.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've been trying to do, because I've been working with Jim on what he's doing. There's another podcast I think you're going to meet with, probably B and Hayden from the INXS Access All Areas podcast. And so I've spent a lot of time actually with these guys, and I've been trying to explain the magic that is the induction ceremony, and particularly when it's in Cleveland, just the environment and the buzz, being around people who are passionate about music. They have stories around why they're passionate about different bands. And you can't, as much as I try, you've been, as much as you try to explain it, you can't really get it until you feel it. And Jim's like, "Hey, I'll fly halfway around the world. I'm buying it." So
yeah, it's true. And when it's in Cleveland specifically, the city becomes invested, because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum is really important to the city of Cleveland.
Yes,
and it becomes a big event for the city. And it usually is every other year. They've put Los Angeles into the rotation a few years ago, which meant that Cleveland lost a year that they expected, and the city was upset, understandably. Whereas New York and LA, nobody knows it's going on. Like
Yeah.
I mean, as big of an event that it is, when you look at it objectively, it's just another thing happening in New York and LA.
And that's so true. My first one was 2018,
Mhm.
and it was the one that was here in Cleveland
Yes.
at the old City Hall. Was it City Hall? The
Public
smaller
hall
venue
or something. Yeah, it's it's a kind of relatively historic but much smaller place.
Yeah, much smaller venue. And then I went to 2018, 2019 in Brooklyn.
Right.
Amazing show,
Mhm.
but not the same feel at all.
No.
And then the 21,
which was
back here in Cleveland,
Yeah.
which was off the charts. And then last year, 23 in Brooklyn, again, great, unbelievable show. But it was a destination. You showed up, you went to the show, you had all that. But the vibe that you kind of get coming in early, and you just don't get it outside. This seeing it here in Cleveland is just amazing.
Yeah, it's really something. I'm glad you're getting to see it, Jim. Well, let me then transition into. I want to keep talking about ceremonies and attending and that kind of thing, but I got to get the other question out of the way, and this is, I think, more targeted towards you, John. But how did you find my podcast?
I found the podcast because I went to the 2018 ceremony. I went to the 2018 ceremony as a fan of the Cars. That's how I justified the expense with my wife.
Yeah.
I said, hey, I want to do this once in a lifetime thing. I was a huge fan of the Cars. She's like, have fun. I have no interest in doing it. She's like, and so I went to the once in a lifetime, thing here. And I went in a Cars fan. And I also like Bon Jovi. I like, Dire Straits, like some of the other bands that were getting in. But I went in as a fan of an individual band.
Sure.
And I came out a fan of the hall.
Wow.
And I went home. I'm like, honey, I know I said this was a one-time thing. I'm going to want to do this again.
Yeah.
And she's awesome. She's like, it's fine. It's, this can be your thing. And so with that, I just started diving in and doing research. I didn't really come to your podcast initially. I found Future Rock Legends.
That's the first stop for everybody.
And so I immersed myself in that. And I think it was actually somewhere within his site that it mentioned the podcast. And so I started listening to you. I started listening to Hall Watchers. I gravitated to just everything that you're doing, just because, not just the drafts and all that kind of stuff, which are amazing, but just the amount of detail you would go into. And then the guests you start pulling in, nominating committee members and, the Rick Crims and Joel Gallen, like, holy cow, because it really doing all this and going to them and being a lover of music, I wanted to understand how it all worked. And you are the master at content when it comes to that. So I can't get enough.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the experience we're hoping to put out there is,
it's working.
Informational, but also with the acts, trying to, we've been very lucky to have access to certain people who have enlightened us on the process now and of yore, so we get like a kind of the full breadth of.
Well, and I think that the history is important, because the history is what drives so much angst with fans of certain bands. And just, I think what you've done tremendously well is kind of tell the story about how things have changed. And when you think about going to a ceremony or the induction process from like 18 to this year, it's light years different.
Totally. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And if you don't really kind of understand a lot of that, people are like, oh, bands are getting blocked because Jan Wenner just said so. Those days are so gone.
Yeah, if they ever really existed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's true to think about 2018. There were 5 performer inductees and Sister Rosetta Tharpe in a side category. And now we're looking at 16 versus 6, 10 additional. Clearly they are looking to move this thing forward and have a wider net.
Well, and bands that rightfully so, the Foreigners, the Dave Matthews, we're, there's some invisible wall that we're not being let out.
If you choose to believe it,
they're coming in, and
exactly.
Lots of people are coming out to help them, and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah. All right. So when did you guys land in Cleveland?
This morning.
This
very morning.
Yeah, he flew in this morning. I drove up. I have family in Ohio, so I drove up. Yeah, and he flew in
6 a.m.
Wow. Okay, so you you said you've already gone to the museum today.
Yeah.
You've got a taste for
we
the
did,
vibe.
We did
teaser lap, and I made him do the Jonathan Demme the so I made him do that to get them all pumped up for tomorrow.
That's smart.
we even grabbed the guitars and
we did.
You went to the garage, as it were.
INXS has been played now.
INXS has been played.
I ran a few tunes just to the guitar. The original scene.
Good.
And never to us far. Oh no, Mr. Fire.
Perfect. Okay, yeah. So you did the smart thing, the thing I advocate for, which is take him to Long Live Rock, the Jonathan Demme kind of full immersive experience.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the best things at the hall, and is sadly overlooked because it's on the 5th floor, and I think people get kind of stuck. Because in the first few levels, there's so much just like knickknacks and wardrobe and instruments and so many really fast.
We were walking through, and I'm like, oh no, don't get stuck in that. Wait, this is just a teaser.
It's true.
Sampler. It's a sampler.
It's the type of place you can spend several days and still have stuff that you didn't see if you're really you're really looking. I'm gonna test your kind of observations here. Are you seeing a lot of fan gear from any of the inductees in particular? Have you noticed where you're like, these guys in the flip flops seem like they're here for Dave Matthews Band?
I've seen a lot of Dave Matthews shirts and Foreigner.
Okay.
I saw Dave Matthews at the airport where they had the whole because I flew in from LA, where they're holding like a stick with his head. So they are enthused fans.
Yes, I mean John, did you get in on? I guess I'll ask this question for you both, but pre-sale tickets, because I think
so that's what I've always done. I do I belong to the hall and get all the pre-sales, and
I think as you may know, in some years that is doesn't matter. Like I would say last year
it did not matter.
Like you could have, and I had to, I usually, Jim, I'll tell you, I get a little excited and I end up buying way more tickets than I need if I'm going to go, because I do the pre-sale, right, to make sure I get them. And then if there are better seats available, then I'll grab those. And I just get a little excited. And I think I could just sell. I had to really take a loss in some of my early tickets because last year there just wasn't much of a demand for it. And you could find you could find really cheap seats. But
I've done the same thing where I usually buy more tickets, and I've kind of made not a game of it, but I have gone for free every year except for last year. I've managed to buy tickets, sell them, get better seats. So I've ended up with really good seats. And so I've managed to go for free up until last year. Last year I took a bath.
Yeah, right. Because I think what you're explaining is you're able to take the seats you don't want anymore, turn them over for more That's sometimes you just have to, because I think it's the Dave fans this year. I think there's a lot of inductees and a lot of fan bases, but I think the Dave fans, your story with the big head, they're devoted,
they're enthusiastic.
Yes, and they will show up and make it happen, and you will have trouble finding seats. So I'm glad you got in on the pre-sale. Was it Jim? What was your experience getting tickets?
I mean, I've been honored by this man. He's
+1.
Yeah,
nice, very good.
Otherwise,
and we have one more coming. So we're gonna represent.
Excellent. That's great. Okay, so. Let's get into kind of the subjects you wanted to talk about. We've already started to touch on it a little bit, but you both are devoted to the cause of getting INXS in the Rock Hall. I should let you. This is just going to be audio for our listeners, but John has what I'm going to guess is a custom-made T-shirt that mimics the kiosk.
It is a screenshot of the kiosk
where if people don't know, you go to the museum, you can vote you can make your voice heard. Who do you want to be in the hall that isn't already? And then you can type in, and there's a leaderboard, and then it says, "I told the hall to put in induct and then INXS, and that's what you've got there on your shirt.
Well, I've got a big T-shirt as well, mate.
Yeah, let me take a look at what you're rocking. Yeah, you guys are wearing the colors. You're loud and proud. Yeah, so let's. I don't know, John, how you want to talk about this. If you want to talk about, I guess, John, I'm curious about both of you. Like, where did this start for you? Where did the cause, the community, like, how did you go into it? Were either of you pivotal in starting the movement? Like, what's just kind of walk me through the history here.
Yeah, what's you?
Okay, so I'll give you a little backstory, and then obviously brings in John. So I'll go back, and it's going to be a bit weird sharing this, but just run with it.
I'll go with you.
So 10 years ago, I'm a chiropractor in Australia. I've got my own business, and it burnt down 10 years ago. My actual clinic. Sorry. Yeah, but it was a huge blessing at the end of the day. And I found music as an outlet at the time, as I call it a saving grace. That was in 2014. That was the same year that I heard about the INXS miniseries came out in Australia, and I think maybe globally. Anyway, fast forward 2-3 years, it was the passing of Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington. But I felt like, I've got to do something with mental health and music, and I created a charity called I'm Just a Man. Now, from that, running it for 3-4 years, and because the actual name I'm Just a Man is actually an INXS song. It's actually one of the songs that Michael wrote with Andrew before he died. It was about his family. So I thought it was very pertinent to everybody. We all come from a family. We all have brothers and sisters, mums and dads. Then sort of 3-4 years into it, because I'm a huge Kiss fan as well, Kiss had been inducted in 2014. I'm doing all this charity work for music and mental health, big focus on INXS. Then a podcast comes out called the INXS Access All Areas Podcast. I get approached by 2 other people in the United States, and they say, let's really launch an Induct INXS petition. Now, there was something small out there, but it was just, I'd seen a small Facebook group or Facebook page, and we said, now we're going to take this full website, full socials, big YouTube channel, which is what we've got at the moment. And here we are now in the 4th year of it, which is how I met John. Mm-hmm. And he'll tell you his story. And, we're hitting 18,000 signatures, but it's about creating that noise. And I've created this idea of what's called the 7 reasons why should INXS be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it's all been confirmed being at the museum. Like, you can see the reasons why they should be there. And we can sort of go into that stuff later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, John, what's your entry into this world?
Yeah. So, well, as I got into the Rock Hall because of the Cars,
right?
But every year it seemed like they were inducting some of my favorite artists, right? So I was a huge Def Leppard fan, and Roxy Music, and the Cure, all these bands. But my all-time favorite band is INXS. So I kind of went looking for, hey, is there anyone kind of doing this? That's how I found the Access All Areas podcast. That's how I got kind of introduced to Jim. And I wanted to do something that was a little more meaningful, not just, I loved your petition. I wanted to sign it, but I wanted to see, okay, is there anything else we can kind of do? And one of the things that I've tried to do is introduce, these guys, Hayden and B and Jim, to, hey, there's the visibility and what fans can do. But if we really want to get them in, we need to understand how all this works.
That's right.
And that's where I'm kind of taking a lot of what I've learned. I mean, from being consumed by the webpage and then your podcast, and relaying to these guys, hey, this is how it works. Here's how the committee works. Here's how they've got 30 people. They basically make a pitch for 2 bands. Our task is, how do we get the INXS story?
How do we get in front of them?
Like, hey, they've sold 75 million records. They have X number of hits. They got enough gold and platinum records that are comparable to, half the bands that are in it. And how do we get that to the right nominating committee member so they can mention that in the meeting?
It's true.
And it's not, it's not just, hey, the awareness of the signatures,
that's just part of it.
Thousands of people to follow the INXS podcast. They have 90 people from 90 different countries listen to an INXS podcast about getting them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. like I would not have imagined that. And there's a huge group of passionate fans that are interested in this. And we're just trying to kind of merge it together and get the ear of somebody on the nominating committee.
Sure. But being on the Rock Hall, right, you go, okay, what are some core reasonings why INXS needs to be there? And, you know, you've alluded to, you know, video culture was amazing, incredible songwriting, Michael Hutchence, the front man, not to disrespect the rest of the members. You know, the number of people that have paid respect to Michael Hutchence after his passing, or even Rock and Roll Hall of Famers, several Rock and Roll Hall of Famers that they've worked with. You know, people, there's this huge collaboration. But being at the Rock Hall, you go, hang on, the Pretenders in here, they've been with them. Ray Charles, they've done songs with Ray Charles. Or, you know, they work with specific producers with the Beatles. And it's like, hang on, they've done that as well. Like, there's all this stuff that all meshes together. So being at the Rock Hall, I think, is like, okay, here's an opportunity to go, this is where they fit in. Here's a display, they fit in here. They fit in here. Or they can put their costumes here, or what they wore at Wembley. Like, there's stuff, you need to really get practical about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so I think a lot of the stuff that I could say has probably been, you know, expressed through John to you, because John listens to me go off and often talk to these people about how things work. And, you know, one thing I don't get the sense you guys are like this, but sometimes fan communities take these things extremely personally. And I hope it has become clear that there are so many artists who aren't in the hall who are deserving. And you know, I just say that because sometimes, and it can come again from people who have a really personal connection where they go like, and sometimes it's the bands themselves that go, there is a conspiracy against us. And you know, and Jan Wenner was often the scapegoat. They can't do that anymore because he's not on the board. But even when he was on the board, he wasn't really doing this. Would be like, well, Jan Wenner and Rolling Stone have always hated us, and they made a rule in the meeting where they're not allowed to be in, and it can kind of spiral out of control. So I again didn't get the sense that you guys felt that way, but I just felt like it was, you know, something to address it maybe for the listener.
It doesn't help. Imagine turning up to the Rock Hall and going, hey man, you guys are a bunch of idiots. Like, that's just that's not how you do relationships, man.
No, it's bad. That's not how diplomatic relationships work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah.
Well, and especially when you see, you know, because you mentioned it, and you know, I think INXS is one of the few bands that I can remember that, you know, I bought the record not because I heard it on the radio. I watched them on MTV. I saw the video. Like, who are these guys running around throwing food at each other and, you know, playing on the back of a truck, you know, and they're Australian and I ended up buying the record because I saw them first. Very similar to like Duran Duran and you know, other bands of that. That was different. You know, they were different.
Did you know for the 25-year anniversary for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Bono performs with Mick Jagger on stage, right? And he performs Stuck in the Moment. That's a song about Michael Hutchence.
Yeah.
And he specifically gets Mick Jagger up there for that reason. Even though he doesn't say it explicitly, he goes, this man will make it special. He's thinking about Michael and the band, right? Now, I don't know, personally, I'm not sure how that went down when as a reflection, as a person looking, but the idea was phenomenal. It's like, this is the 25th anniversary. Here's a song, 2009. At that point, they were eligible anyway from 2006 onwards, but you're like, it's in front of you right there. Like, that's the magic right there. It's right behind you.
Yeah. I'm curious if you guys know, John might know this, but I do have a running list on Vulture.com.
We made the top 8.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I was so happy. I should let you finish.
Yeah, no, I have an article that I have had that I update every year on Vulture.com, and it's New York Magazine, essentially. And it's artists that deserve to be in the hall who have never made a ballot. And so each year, I'm happy to say maybe
done well.
1 to 3 artists that I have listed make the ballot that year. So then I get to change it and I get to repopulate it with a new group. And I was able to add INXS this year, and I was very happy
to. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I'll make sure to send you a link. It's, you know, it's a very condensed kind of case. You know, I make the case for induction, and then I also speculate like what could the holdup be. And I think with INXS, I will just say out of the gate, they're going to get in. I don't know if anyone with a position of authority, and my position of authority is, you know, arguable, dubious to some, but I do not see a world where INXS does not get in. Perhaps
doesn't matter when.
Yeah, it's perhaps the movement is to make it happen sooner rather than later, which, you know, makes perfect sense. But I would say an artist of that enormity, an artist with that many sales and hits, and also hits that remain present,
timeless.
Yeah, truly, and a lot of them, and I would say a lot more than maybe an American audience would initially think.
Yeah.
It really surprises me how often when I'm listening to, say, your hits of the 80s, 90s today, or any type of radio station that plays kind of legacy hits, the sheer amount of INXS songs that still get played and that are
to your point, it's not one or two, it's a dozen.
It really is in a way that I think is really impressive. And I think they're kind of the danceability while still being rock, something about that has allowed them to withstand the test of time more so than a lot of their peers, I would say.
I reckon it's because of their, you know, they've got that real funk rock fusion sound that if you go back in time, you know, it's music that was probably then in different forms, 60s and 70s, maybe even early 80s, and they just somehow rebadged it and refocused on it. But, you know, they moved. There's some great interviews where Andrew Farris talks about where they were a punk rock band. Sure. And they're playing really quick. Yeah, if you listen to the early INXS, they're really fast. And then they've gone into that kind of funk rock, especially when What You Need came out. You know, and they still got that rock sound, like Don't Change, but you know, they went to that sort of funk rock sound that's danceable rock music.
Yeah, and will always, I think, be in fashion. Like there will always be an audience for that type of music. And I would say that we are the Hall has made it to the MTV era. It's kind of late, but as of the last few years, you look at who's gotten in, and it's like George Michael, Lionel Richie, Duran Duran, Pat Benatar, Go-Go's, Eurythmics, like, and this is all happened just within the past few years, and I think that is a really good indicator of this year is oddly like an exception. I don't see any bands that are being inducted this year that feel like an MTV artist.
This year seemed like a righting of the wrongs year.
You've got like a lot of you've got like your 3 90s, like Tribe and Mary J. Blige and Dave Matthews Band. And then you've got like a lot of folks who came out of the 70s. And it does feel like it's skipping over the 80s. But I don't think that's going to be a trend. I think the trend has been established the few years before that. And I think, you know, when you look at the MTV artists that still have yet to get in, you know, there's Cyndi Lauper, there is Billy Idol, who will play tomorrow and set himself up nicely. But I think INXS is going to be a group that is going to be around.
We are definitely hoping you're right.
Yeah, I mean that's just it's a matter. There, you know, we do a draft every year of who we think is going to get nominated, and INXS has come up a few times, and you know, it's the reason is just it's maybe too big to fail is one of the phrases I could use, but it's just hard to look, especially at that era, and not consider them, you know, not to.
I was telling Jim that, you know, because I've been a fan, and in '88 I went to a show, an INXS show. They have the big festival in Texas every year, and it's called the Texas Jam, and they had all these bands like Smithereens, and INXS was the headliner. And it was '88, so Appetite for Destruction was out. Guns N' Roses opened for INXS.
Crazy.
People don't know that.
At a 65,000 seat stadium, and INXS was the headliner.
Mm-hmm.
It was but people don't realize like how big they were. Mm-hmm. Like they don't.
Yeah. But, you know, to the MTV point, the current chairman, who's been the chairman since about 2020, when we started to see a lot of these MTV acts get in, he was an old MTV executive, guy named John Sykes.
John Sykes,
so, yeah, I mean, that's things are looking good. And so I wasn't sure if anyone had told you that directly, but like, I think
we've had the conversations. We've even gone through the list that's in the nominating committee and who would be people that would connect and relate to INXS, and there's a few people in there.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I mean,
that's relevant
for sure.
Relevant, yeah.
Now, John, when we were talking earlier off pod, you had mentioned discussing just kind of like petitions and fan communities and that kind of stuff, and I was curious if there was any. I mean, you had sent me some infographics about petitions and stuff.
I like data and
me too. Me too. I'm curious.
I thought you might like that.
Yeah, of course. You know, I'm a bit of a list guy, numbers guy, I like that stuff. And I'm curious what kind of stuff you found, anything you want to like discuss just about that subject in general.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that jumped out for me and what you're referring to is that, you know, I just went on to change.org, right? That's where your petition is. And I was like, all right, so I was just kind of curious how many bands had, you know, how many fan groups had petitions out there. And there's like 25 plus petitions that are more than 1,000 signatures for their artists to kind of get in. And to me, what that told me was there's clearly a need for, you know, a fan group to, you know, shout from the hilltops, hey, what about us? And I think that, you know, one of those needs is kind of filled by, you know, the kiosk when you go to the kiosk here, but you're kind of limited to, you know, the people who are coming to Cleveland, you know, paying their fee. And so you're getting a flavor of that. But, you know, I think there is a gap in terms of, hey, I want it to be known that I believe, you know, my fandom for this particular artist, you know, warrants, you know, further consideration for the Rock Hall. I think the only other kind of non-Rock Hall platform is really Rock Legends. You know, you can kind of vote for. Actually, I was pinging him yesterday. It's like, hey, have you ever thought about doing your own kind of top 10, top 20 kind of thing? Because I don't think there's really any data out there outside of these petitions and whatnot that exist. And there is a need out there that's really not, you know, being fulfilled. And I think where different artist groups and fan groups are turning is, you know, things like Jim's doing. Hey, we're going to create some energy here because there's really no other place to do it.
And that's why we never, when we started the petition, it wasn't like, I know that, you know, we've always been aware of the process. It's not like, oh, once we get to a certain amount, 50,000, oh, they're going to be in. It's not that, but it's one aspect of creating noise. I think the most important thing is to be able to get in front of a nominating committee member, again, respectfully. No, oh, my band needs to be in. None of that stuff. But, you know, and let them see, and they already know when you start to really peel it back. If you've got all these 80s bands that have been inducted, and INXS is in contemporary of these people, it's just getting those people to become aware of it and get excited.
It'd be. I'm surprised the Rock Hall, given, you know, and I know the kiosk vote and the top, you know, I know Greg Harris, you know, I think I've heard it on your podcast that, you know, part of his job in the nominating committee is to kind of bring that flavor. Okay, here's the kind of, you know, the top artists that are out there, and now whether or not that leads to his two or not, I don't think anybody knows. But I'm surprised that, you know, given the Rock Hall clearly wants to listen to the fans, you know, the fact that you know, Dave Matthews, you know, was top vote getter and didn't get a few years ago, I think that was an embarrassment. I think they kind of
a little bit, yeah.
And I think if you listen to Joe's podcast, they've acknowledged, hey, that was, you know,
yeah, man,
and I think that if you think about what they do around the fan vote, right, and if you took that one level further, kind of translated the kiosk into kind of almost like a year-round type of thing, and they can control, you know, how many votes, and, you know, and turn that into something that people could get behind and have that be an input into the committee.
But see, the only thing I don't like about the kiosk is only here. Yeah,
that's what I'm getting.
That's
at.
what John's.
It's kind of a compliment. using the technology they've got for the fan vote
to create an online kiosk, essentially.
Create an online kiosk. And then if you're telling the fan groups that, hey, you know what, if you vote here, this is going to get talked about. That would be unbelievably powerful.
Yes.
And it would give give the fan group something to shoot for. And I think it would be consistent with what the halls want to do. It's like, hey, popularity is an input. It is an input.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, because I do think the kiosk has some weight to it. Like you said, I think Greg Harris does bring that. I think they look at the top 10 or so on that kiosk. I think about that first year they did the kiosk, the top 2 vote getters were Stevie Nicks and Def Leppard, and then they both got in that year. I don't think that was a coincidence. Still, I mean, now we're getting like the last few years, I think it's been like Blink-182 and Motley Crue who have not made the ballot. But I do think I think the Dave Matthews thing, I think that is partially kiosk related. I think there is something to that, but like you said, Jim, it's so limited by the attendees of the people who bought a ticket to go to the museum in Cleveland in a physical space, right?
Yes.
And so that is difficult, because what I would say is that if somehow you could mobilize folks to vote on that kiosk and get INXS in the top 5 or 10 in Cleveland, which is like again a logistical nightmare of a task, but I think that would be meaningful, and it speaks to what John is saying. Having an online kiosk, having a version that is, I mean, one, it like gets people to think about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame year round, right? If you just have an open like poll voting for people to submit who they think. But yeah, and also I just to your point, Jim, talking about the reality of the petition, like, yes, these petitions, they if you hit a certain mark, it's not really going to make a difference with the nominating committee, but that idea of making noise and energy, I think, is a really good one.
Yes.
And the idea that, like, because sometimes with these nominating committee, they're people. They're people who are online. They're some of them don't even work in the music industry anymore. They're just like, and the sad thing is, some of these people are not really giving it much thought when they are bringing their names to the table. I wish they had the passion that the three of us have. But it's just the reality. I've talked to these people, and it's some who are still on, some who aren't. But it would shock you how many of them are like, oh yeah, it's like a day before, and I'm like, who should get in? Who even is in? It's just so it's just part of the system. But when you're making a lot of noise with something, kind of what you're hoping is that it's reaching all these different corners, so that maybe someone on the committee is like, what's that? INXS? Oh, interesting. And then they keep scrolling, but you're in their head now.
That's right. Yeah. You got it.
And so that is, I think, the realistic way.
That's exactly right.
The realistic way to put it, because I know sometimes people do these petitions and they think like, like what you had described, like if I hit a certain benchmark, they'll have to acknowledge us. And the reality is, they don't have to do shit. But you do want it. It's also, there is something to the community building aspect of it that I think is lovely.
Yes.
There is one
central thing
out there that I think is very unique, because obviously, most of the performers, I like the one. There was one out there. They got thousands of signatures for the original 5 VJs.
Isn't that
they're
odd?
They're trying to get some energy around the subcommittee. I'm like, that's brilliant.
That's real.
Because there's no, like, how do you influence that? And then when you think about it, because I think you've talked about different, like, old school VJs who are disc jockeys who are in, and you think about how much the world changed with the VJs, and like, every person, every kid I knew, like, you know, who didn't have a crush on Martha Quinn? And like, everyone kind of knew all of those people. They changed it. So I like that particular one because they're trying to influence and get some noise around a subcommittee. Like,
right. Yeah, side category. It's interesting. In general, I'm not particularly passionate about non-artist inductions. You know, but
I was more just trying to trend. You know, hey, that's creativity.
Yeah, you're right. It is creative. Well, guys, I think that's gonna just about do it. I think we've covered a lot of areas, and I appreciate you both taking the time and being a part of this. Have a blast in Cleveland at the induction.
Thank you for inviting us, and
thank you for your time.
Enjoy the wedding.
Absolutely.
Kristen, you know,
yes, I'll send along.
All right.
I'll be like, John, he listens to the show. He wants you to know. And
hey,
like,
I noticed the last episode, and she was talking about. She seemed genuinely bummed she was going to be missing this.
How about that?
Man, you have gotten her a long way.
How about that? Yeah, pretty funny. And it's she's busy for her wedding of all things. All right, guys. Thanks again so much.
Cheers.
Have a blast in Cleveland.
Thanks, buddy.
Take
Nice
care.
to meet you.